daddy.
No.
Come to daddy.
No.
Antes. Hi, I'm Felipe.
I'm Lillian.
And this is the Postmodern Family.
Thank you so much for watching our videos. If you haven't seen us before, we are Americans living in the UK and we talk about traditional family life. So hit that subscribe button if you're interested.
Okay, this is like our trip to France, another catch-up episode in which we're telling a story of a thing we've done probably, was it 2 years back or a year and a half back? And what we're going to talk about today is our trip to the Holy Land, to Israel, with folks back from our American church. And if you're wondering why we're not wearing glasses, it's because I can't find my shades. It's really bright. You can see me squinting. So
yeah, he doesn't normally look this Chinese.
Look at the rainbow eyes. It was actually geared towards clergy mainly, and we were invited to come in as lay people, which is really makes for a fascinating trip. And the point, one of the main objectives of the trip was to highlight the Jewish roots of the Christian faith, theologically, experientially, emotionally, in every regard. Every stop that we took, there was kind of a seminar,
a lecture,
like a lecture given on. You began with the explanation of the Jewish aspect of what we're looking at, and then potentially transition into what does this mean for Christianity.
Coming from a more Baptist Pentecostal background, there was quite a low view of Jewish tradition, and sometimes a low view of the Old Testament, which is not the case for a lot of churches, but you do get some who just say, why do we need to read the Old Testament at all? You know, Jesus came and said that all the old laws are gone, blah, blah, blah. And I think for me, knowing Felipe and also having studied more, you learn to appreciate the Jewish roots that really informed Christianity. And without knowing that, it's like you don't see the full picture of what Christianity is. So I learned a lot.
I don't think you can actually understand Christianity.
No. And
the Jewish roots of Christianity are the key that unlock all the understanding of what Christianity
absolutely
is.
So if you have any doubts about reading the Old Testament, we would encourage you to read through the Old Testament.
So we began the journey in the southern part of Israel in an effort to try to understand the wilderness wanderings. If you remember, with the Israelites leaving Egypt and crossing the Red Sea as it was parted by God, we started out in an area that would be reflective or representative. It wasn't the exact area. It's still, no one knows what area geographically the Israelites wandered for 40 years, but this area is thought to be representative of the wilderness wandering. So it's a very rugged, tough, and difficult terrain, which we hiked. And it was quite a challenge for me, at least, as I carried our daughter on my back during the hike. I strapped her in, and she slept the whole time.
So this was the Negev Desert region that we walked through, and it was really cool because as we're walking through, they're talking about how in this kind of environment you are vulnerable to wild animals and to being attacked, and
to the lack of water,
and yes, to the environment not providing water. And so the Israelites would have had to trust God for their food and water and for their safety in the way that the modern person doesn't experience.
During this walk, we stumbled upon some caves in the cliffs of the terrain. In the Middle Ages, some monks came and lived as hermits or a secluded life, and made caves, and inside the caves they made places and cutouts in the rock where they would conduct the Lord's Supper. Having the opportunity to walk and touch and listen and smell the places where they actually walked is an incredible experience. We also walked around. We're still in the southern part of Israel, and we went to some ruined cities and ruined towns, and this gave us a feel for how Jewish life was organized, what a internal house had, the spaces, the rooms, what they considered important. And what I found really interesting, most interesting, I hadn't realized that, so we talk about baptism in the Christian faith, and I hadn't realized that it has some roots in the act of ritual immersion, ritual cleansing before entering the temple or a place of worship in the Jewish civilization. This idea of fully immersing yourself in water to spiritually and physically cleanse yourself finds itself in the Jewish tradition.
So all of the ancient ruins that we saw had at least one bath, but many had many baths. And then the cisterns were also things that every city would have to have. Before the invention of the cistern, they had to rely on rain?
A nearby body of water or rain. And this is an example of, again, how the Jewish faith and the Jewish life really can help you understand the biblical references. In the Old Testament, there's a lot of talk about poisoned water and trusting in cisterns instead of trusting in the living waters of God. Mm-hmm. So, as a cistern, for those who don't know, it's a big volume, cut out volume under the ground where you would store up water for days as a contingency if your water source ran out, let's say rain or a lagoon or whatever. In many instances in these little towns, the water in the cisterns would go bad. In the biblical text, you would find many allusions to man trusting in cisterns rather than in God.
Oh, Mao. Mao.
That's here.
The holy city of Jerusalem. So this is where it's a true pilgrimage. You can't just go to Israel, you have to go to Jerusalem. And we were fortunate enough to be staying at a guest house in the old city, Jerusalem. So within the gates.
The walls.
So we've got the Muslim quarter, the Jewish quarter, the Christian quarter, and the Armenian quarter. Which I thought that was interesting because I didn't know anything, and I don't know anything about Armenia and why they hold such a...
Well, they hold an honorable place in that they were the first European country to convert to Christianity. Oh. So the king of Armenia then came down to Jerusalem, and a lot of pilgrims came down and came to live.
Because it's divided up into these four quarters, there is tension on the streets. In the air.
I mean, first of all, there is just so much to talk about Jerusalem as one of the not just an ancient city, but one of the most hotly contested cities on earth. There was not much, like I said, there's so much built upon the old city in all areas of Israel, really. But in the Temple Mount, there were steps to the, I think what used to be a gate or an entrance, a big entrance into the Second Temple. And the steps that are there have not been destroyed or built upon, and they are the steps apparently that Jesus would have used to walk into the temple. We stayed there for quite a while, meditating and praying and thinking and reflecting. For me, it was very overwhelming, very overwhelming. So you had to focus on very specific things that you wanted to see. Because if you let yourself just focus on the things that you happen to look upon and happen to see, you could spend endless amounts of time there. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre was probably the highlight of the whole trip for me. Historically in Christendom, people have viewed the Church of the Holy Sepulchre as enclosing the area where he was crucified on Calvary and where he was buried. Different areas of the church are controlled by different traditions within Christianity. So you have Eastern Orthodox and you have Roman Catholic, and I think you have Armenian as well. And I think you might even have a Coptic group controlling as well.